I am good. All right, here we go. All right, we are back once again. Day 2 of March Madness. It was a wild 16 games yesterday. This is the result of watching all 16 of them. Not a lot of sleep, but we are back at it to do the Friday edition 16 more. And to do that, I am Ben Rasa. I am joined, of course, by Matt Gajewski. Sir, we had peacocks, we had spiders, we had all sorts of shenanigans. Day 1 of the tournament. How do you feel?
I feel good. We took the bad end of some bets, but we also hit the solid end of some others. I mean, Michigan over Colorado State was one that I had and took a bad number, but they were lucky to overcome that. The shot quality score was actually 74-73. I mean, if you took Boise, you got some tough breaks there. They had a 58% chance to win that game based on the shots they took. They end up losing. Richmond, Iowa. Iowa had a 74% chance of winning the game based on the quality of their shots. If you just projected it out from the shot quality that Richmond and Iowa had, it was 77-70, Iowa on top. So just a really tough break there. I mean, I had Iowa -9, so it wasn't going to cover anyway. But if you're an Iowa backer, you ran ice cold, and I'll definitely be fading this Richmond team moving forward. But how was your day?
It was all right. That was one I actually ended up taking the points. My big bet was North Carolina, and rarely do you get a sweat-free bet. And that was what we got there. That was fantastic. San Francisco would have been stealing because I took a bad number. And they gave it their all. They fought incredibly hard, just not able to get over the hump in overtime there. But I was happy with it. For what we got bracket-wise, the upsets hurt, but nothing super bad for me. My big horses are still there. And now we got 15 games on the DFS slate and 16 games to talk about. Anything else before we dive in here that you want to mention about yesterday?
Yeah, I just got a funny one. As long as I'm looking up the shot quality projected win losses. Like for what you guys, if you guys don't know what shot quality is, look it up on Twitter, Google, wherever. They're an analytics site that projects games out based on the quality of shots you take, premiums for 3-pointers, buckets around the hoop, negatives for like contested long twos. The funniest one I'm seeing right now is Kentucky St. Peter's. Obviously, St. Peter's gets the win. But the projected score based on shot quality is Kentucky 85, St. Peter's 63. Based on the shots they took, Kentucky had a 98% chance to win that game. 98%. Unbelievable run called for Kentucky. But I mean, everybody's bracket's busted. If you're feeling sad, just know that you're not alone.
You're not alone. Unless you're a Boilermaker. Feeling good. The table is set. They'll probably lose to Yale. But no, I mean, that happens. South Dakota State was another one like that. I was fortunate with Richmond, unfortunate with them with shot quality. It's a give and take like anything. We got a super chat right off the bat, Joshua. No message, just straight cash, and we appreciate that. Very generous. Thank you, sir. If you people want to show support, you know the drill. Easiest way, hit that like button. And if you want to join, just press subscribe right there. Look at that. Look at these graphics from the man behind the glass. Super chatted $10. All right, let's get into it. First thing, I start every show like this when we do college sports by mentioning who is powering the show, and it is PrizePicks once again. Talked about that from yesterday. We had a lot of people, at least I did on Twitter, saying, hey, I hopped on, gave it a shot. The props were on point. Matt's projections, the whole team did a great job, and we've got that opportunity today. If you haven't been over there, daily prop-based contest, we've got a promo code Awesemo for a $100 first match deposit bonus. You're just picking basically over-unders. You can do rebounds, points, all sorts of things. You can parlay them up for up to 10x your entry fee. You can download in the App Store or on Google Play or play on prizepicks.com. And if you sign up, you get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum using the link in the description of this video after you make your deposit. I asked you yesterday, Matt, about guys like Oscar Sheedway, Baycott. We've got some, of course, big-time players here like Jabari Smith, who has a 10% off promo there. Some else. Do you have a guy? Do you focus on the stars, or are you looking for diamonds in the rough?
Completely depends. I just honestly try to find the players that are mispriced based on their projections. And I think we have one today with USC stud Isaiah Mobley. This is a close projected game. It's a 2-point spread in favor of USC. So there's not really a lot of blowout risk here. Mobley's their stud, and they've had a couple games this year. They didn't play great non-con. So there are some games where he didn't play full minutes. But when he's on the floor, he always brings double-double upside. And then you just have the best matchup you could possibly draw up for Mobley. Miami doesn't have any size. They don't have any rebounding. And that's the matchup that Mobley is going to exploit. Miami outside the top 300 in rebounding. They basically play with Wardenberg as their only big man, and then they run 4 guards. They play really small, and Mobley has an advantage over everything. So with him, the one I like the most is over points, rebounds, and assists, which is 24.5. I honestly think he could get there with just points and rebounds.
Yeah, rebounds, they're 8.5 if you want to go that route. I want to ask you one more.
Like the over there too. I would take the over on that.
I mean, Miami, we're going to talk about that game, obviously. Their front court could be in trouble. Another team whose front court I can promise you will be in trouble would be Yale's. What do you think about the rebounding props for guys like Edey or Travion? Do you think that the blowout risk coupled with their, fringe minutes, or do you say they're just going to feast down there?
Yeah, fringe minutes is a kind way to describe their moron coach. They split the 5. Edey and Travion Williams never play together, no matter what. Whoever gets in foul trouble, if it's Edey, he plays 16 minutes. Travion's playing 24. If neither of them get in foul trouble, they're both playing 20. So neither of them project over their props. But if one of them gets in foul trouble, the other could easily eclipse it. So just too volatile for my liking.
Yeah, fair enough. And I don't know why Painter can't figure that out. Time will tell. It would be nice if he could. Another super chat from SW. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, let's do it. You ready to dive in?
Yeah, man, let's go.
First game up, one of the more interesting on the slate, at least to me. Loyola, dangerous team. The Ramblers, they're a slight 1-point favorite, depending on, looking at OddsChecker, you can find around pick them if you want. Against Ohio State, 132-point total. So last year, I believe it was Sunday. It was either Saturday or Sunday in the second round. Loyola took apart AO and Illinois, just handled them as an 8 seed. Here, they're not nearly as good, and this is the first round. But talk to me about this team. What remains and how do they play in this matchup against Ohio State?
All their best players are gone. This team is a shell of itself last year. They finished 4th in the Missouri Valley, but a couple upsets got them through. So we talked about this a lot yesterday with some of these teams. For the most part, those teams all lost except Richmond. St. Peter's was not included in that because they actually won their conference and played well in the regular season. But some of these lame ducks that got through, most of them lost. Loyola fits this bill. The public is backing Loyola. They're a team they see play twice a year. And last year, the Illinois upset is at the forefront of their mind. But this is a much weaker team, losing almost every step of the way to notable competition. They stepped up a couple times, lost to Michigan State by 2, got crushed by Auburn. Outside of that, they didn't really play a strong level of competition. They did beat your San Francisco Dons, but that's really their only quality win outside of conference. Ohio State's getting healthier to this point. There are positive reports about Zed Key and Kyle Young. They're kind of vague, so we don't have their status nailed down for sure. But their injuries severely limited their front court during the Big Ten tournament. If they're both back, they just have so many advantages over Loyola. The fact that this game is a pick'em is kind of surprising to me. I took Ohio State in the betting markets. The reason for DFS, I don't love it as much, is just the total isn't fantastic. And you have EJ Price way up with the potential of Key and Young in the lineup. It could reduce his minutes a little bit. And then a guy like Branham's always expensive. And when you look at this Loyola team, they're still playing slow. Usage is not really condensed to one player. It's spread across the board. I think it's a little difficult to get to.
And again, we have to kind of wait on these. You mentioned the Q tags and whatnot. If the front court is clear, does a guy like Brunk become playable for value as opposed to Liddell, who's almost 10K?
Even with the injury, Brunk hasn't played consistent minutes. And I mean, he's a guy they've shown no willingness to play really all year. He was seeing like 4 minutes a game till the injuries. He's not athletic, but I mean, that's not really going to matter against Loyola. I think if you are punting with this team, you're probably just playing a guy like Wheeler for the consistency, but even that is a little risky for my liking. It's basically EJ Liddell for me or Branham as a contrarian guard, but even that is a bit risky.
On the other side, you kind of already alluded to this, maybe not just being the best environment for a guy like Williamson, Ugok, anything on Loyola's side, or are they just priced too much? And I do lean Ohio State with you. I think that Loyola's way inflated just on name recognition alone.
Yeah, the usage for all these guys is spread, and you're paying elite prices for them. Like Lucas Williamson's right there with like Benedict Mathurin. Absolutely not.
Okay, fair enough. And we both kind of lean to Ohio State. You bet them already, right?
Yeah, I did take them. I think you can get a better number today. I took them at a pick 'em, and Public money rolling in on the chalk Loyola. It's a bit shocking.
Yeah, that is a little disturbing for my book. All right. Second game up, Jacksonville State and Auburn, maybe another 15 seed. Crash the party. Auburn is a sizable favorite, as expected, 15-point favorites, 138.5 point total. I lean over here. I think this game could be a little more up and down. I know Jacksonville State's methodical. They shouldn't even be in. Don't get me started on Bellarmine, but what do you make of this team against Auburn? Can they produce anything? Or are they a cross-off, or is there value we could mine here?
Jacksonville State was the 1 seed in the regular season. So, I mean, they didn't win their conference tournament. They did lose, and they are in based on a technicality with Bellarmine. They stepped up in competition a couple times this year. They lost to Wichita State by 3, lost to VCU by 14, and they actually played Alabama fairly close to Alabama, maybe the streakiest team in the country. But I still don't think they hang with Auburn, who has one of the best resumes in the entire country. Auburn's issues, they don't play well on the road. All their losses occurred on the road or at neutral locations, and they're going to be playing, obviously, neutral locations all throughout the tournament. So that's a concern, but not really here against Jacksonville State. This isn't one where I particularly like anything in the betting markets. But for DFS, Auburn has a high enough team total where you could take a stab on some of these guys. They do have blowout risk, and we saw that work both ways yesterday. We saw games where the blowout affected players, and then we saw games like Gonzaga where Georgia State kept it close enough that those Gonzaga studs could access their ceiling. So for tournaments, you can play guys like Walker, Jabari. I even think Wendell Green and Katie Johnson are in play, just hoping that Jacksonville State keeps it a little closer and this plays above the total. If I had to pick between them, it's still going to be Jabari and Walker. Walker has legit double-double upside through blocks, and blocks are worth so much for DFS purposes. Still, he's not a main team play. I'd rather play like Kofi over him. On the Jacksonville State side, they do have a pretty decent usage leader in Darian Adams, but it's spread a little across the board. And when we're talking mid-majors, I think there's just a couple other better spots where we can find a stud who gets more usage than a guy like Darian Adams.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. Obviously, the volume's going to be there. He could push for near 40 minutes today, especially if even if it doesn't stay close. He's going to be out there a ton. I just don't know what they can do. Like I said, I think they'll be able to score a little bit. I think Auburn will control tempo. I think Auburn could hang 75 to 80 in this game. Anything for cash here, or are you kind of just drawing? It doesn't seem like you're going for a game stack or anything like that. Just maybe a sporadic GPP play, if anything.
That's exactly it. I don't have anybody in cash here.
Nothing on the betting side. It's a pass for me besides the over. I'm not taking a side here. 15 feels about right.
Yeah, I took Auburn at a better number. So currently I would not grab this.
Fair enough. And I will say again, if you're looking for PrizePicks, Jabari Smith has a 10% off prop. You obviously want to take that just because they're giving you a good line, over 25.5 points, rebounds, assists. The line that they originally had was 28.5. So if you're looking for that, definitely some value there. All right. Another, pretty lopsided affair potentially, even though this team is a little scrappy. Montana State versus Texas Tech, another 15-point spread, 131.5. Texas Tech's defense is just insane. Does that render the game useless from DFS, or are the price points so appealing that we can still get value?
The total's not as bad as I initially thought it might be. So, I mean, it's above 130, which isn't great. 131.5. Texas Tech has an implied team total north of 73. Montana State's at 58. So it's a pretty rough spot for them overall. And stylistics do not favor Montana State here. But when we look at some of the players in the game, I wish that Kevin McCullough was a little bit cheaper. We had a discount on him for a while there because he was coming off an injury, but he's mid 5Ks. You can just play guys on mid majors that are usage monsters instead of guys like McCullough who are going to split time on a better team. But, I would rather just take the guy with like 40-point upside. McCullough doesn't have that. Looking at the Montana State side, they do have a pretty decent usage guy in Xavier Bishop. He has a 28% shot rate last 3, 54% assist rate. But he's a guard. You just don't have a lot of double-double equity there. Like, he's still probably not going to get there with assists. So it's tough to play him. Minutes are solid, but there will be a couple of these mid-major studs that are just absolutely baller plays, and he's just kind of middling here. Don't have a lot of interest in the game.
Xavier Bishop, specifically, you mentioned his assist rate, and I know he's going against Texas Tech. His over-under on assists and PrizePicks is 3 on the dot. Can you push over there?
Yeah,
Too low?
it's too low.
I would agree. Okay. So again, that's one I think that even in a tough matchup, I wouldn't be stunned to see Montana State hang in kind of methodically, kind of like Akron, not to that extent because Akron should have won the game. But, keep it close, keep it surgical, maybe lose by like 8-12, something like that. I may consider adding them. 131.5 seems right. Do you have a play on this game from the betting side?
Took a lot of games today. This again is not one of them. I promise you guys here in the beginning, the games get really good later in the day.
Oh, this is going to be a good game. Like I said, I can't wait to see this team play Texas Tech's defense. But
what team did you say that about yesterday? Was it Richmond?
Probably.
You were right.
Spiders, baby.
I
mean, I've learned this the hard way more often than not. When you have a team, and this is me speaking out of both sides of my mouth because I back Purdue every week. When you have a team that has a coach that doesn't know what they're doing, I mean, if you didn't know anything about Iowa, you wouldn't even know who Keegan Murray is because they're letting McCaffrey shoot the ball 25 times. I don't really get it, but they were punished and they should have been for that coaching. Anyway, we will get to more competitive games, but 3 of the first 4 big time spreads. And I think this one is going to get out of hand. Yale versus Purdue, 16.5. I will give you credit. You have this on your card, but you got 15. You bet it early in the week. Very sharp number. I took a worse number, but I still feel good about it. 144.5. Okay. Talk to me about the discrepancy in height here and how that could be exploited. And what do we do with this game?
Yale is 352nd in effective height. That's just the size of the players that actually get minutes for your team. Purdue is 9th. Yale, in terms of rebounding, it's a disaster. They're 101st. Somehow they play really weak competition. I think that's why they're so high. Purdue is 27th. Purdue's a team that doesn't have the best defense. They're 189th in defensive efficiency, but they really struggle against the pick and roll. Yale just doesn't have the athletes to exploit Purdue in this area. And when you just have guys that have these size advantages, and you've many of them, it doesn't really matter if Edey or Trevion gets in trouble, and they have other players that are big too. If Edey gets in foul trouble, Trevion comes right into the game. So this advantage is exploitable one way or another. I mean, Purdue's also a team that doesn't foul a ton. Even with the big guys they do have, they're not fouling a lot, but they draw a ton of fouls with the big guys they have. And Yale is just outside the top 100 in most fouls committed. So they're a team that will foul a decent amount. And with the step up in competition, it's just a complete disaster. Not to mention the pace in the game is actually slightly above average. And that mostly is coming from the Yale side. So if they try to pace up Purdue, I mean, you want to slow this game down. You want to introduce variance. The increased pace does not bode well for Yale. So I would still back this against the spread. Maybe if you want to just throw Purdue in money line parlays, that could be another way you access the game. For DFS, it's a little less interesting because you have the tap ceiling with Purdue. You can't get more than 20 minutes or so from Edey and Trevion. Their coach just won't play him anymore. You can always play Ivy, but there's a blowout risk. He doesn't exploit the matchup quite as well. And from there, they rotate a bunch of players, the ancillary players. Maybe you could use like an Eric Hunter who's cheap, but there's not a ton in this game for DFS on the Purdue side. Yale's a little interesting. Azar Swain has a 31% shot rate last 3, but that's all he's doing. If he's not hitting the shots, he'll probably bust. Noling is a player with pretty decent minutes. Don't love the upside going up against the Purdue front court. Bez Bung is a guy with pretty decent minutes lately. He's more of a peripheral player. He's 4K. And if you're getting to Yale, he's probably the guy I would do so with because he's not expensive. He avoids the front court and he gets there in a lot of different ways. It's just Yale's team total is very low. Luckily with Bung, 4K price tag, what does he really need to do to get you there?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think this is an environment game-wise. I mean, the total kind of implies that Yale wants to play fast. It's just going to be a disaster if they actually do it here. What about Gillis? I just wanted to bring him up as well. 4,500, unnecessary, possible salary relief. Another big who's in the rotation for Purdue.
Yeah, he just doesn't do anything. His usage rate is 8.5%. He's a wind sprinter, and I mean that part of it makes sense. Like, I don't think they should be asking Mason Gillis to do anything on offense.
Yeah.
Defer to your studs. So, I mean, I would rather play Eric Hunter in the same price range than Gillis. He just does a little bit more. And I see this notion in the chat. Someone brought up, they're making out to Yale to be far better than they are. That is 100% true. You're going to hear people on these broadcasts saying things like Yale's a team we don't want to face in the tournament. Yale is absolutely a team you want to face in the tournament. You could not draw up a better first round matchup for Purdue. Yale has lost every step of the way when they've played increased competition. We already mentioned the height discrepancy between these teams. Yale is absolutely the team you want to face in the first round.
That's right. And that is why if Purdue was ever going to cover a game, and that may never happen, given what they've been doing, this would be the spot. A couple questions before we move on to the next game. From Joshua, he said, some of these mid-majors, they have a true alpha. San Francisco, we saw it with Allen for New Mexico State. Do you like to target those guys? Does the game have to be competitive, or can you go there for some of these teams that are playing, a 2-seed or a 3-seed? How do you approach something like that?
It comes down to price most of the time. Sometimes you can find like the third or fourth option for a good team. We'll say like Illinois or USC, or you can find an absolute stud for a mid-major. And the mid-majors, while they might get blown out, they typically aren't bringing their best players off the floor. It's the last game of their season. They have nothing else to play for. Most of these guys don't have a future past college unless they have some overseas. But I mean, most of them do not play basketball beyond this. So they're on the floor the whole game. You actually get some run against worse players if the game blows out. So I'm comfortable targeting mid-majors, especially when they're cheaper. It's when they get expensive that I don't love it as much. Like I'm not going to play Azar Swain over like a guy in Arizona, or that's probably a poor example because he's 6,200, but like a 7K guy, I'm not playing him over Mobley. I'm not playing him over Benedict Mathurin or Tubelis.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. It is a case by case, but there are some of these guys in the right scenario that can absolutely smash. We saw it yesterday. Another question before we get to this next game. Some of the projections for the big favorites are over these prize pick numbers. Is that a spot to attack? Does the blowout risk factor in? I mean, what do you do when you've got, some of these guys that look very appealing for these overs, but they could be watching from the sidelines at the end of the game?
Yeah. So I'll use the Purdue guys as an example. They have a little more variance, I would say, because they don't play a lot of minutes. But USC is a great example today where I can say from doing projections, like some of these places that do lines are doing it largely close to season averages. But Mobley, Boogie Ellis, Drew Peterson, these are players that haven't always played consistent minutes. They're playing more minutes now, and there's no blowout risk. So those are situations where I'm definitely looking at the overs. Cross-reference some of these with minutes, look at the historical averages, try to see why. But typically, if the projection is much higher than the prop, I'm just taking it.
Yeah, there you go. Again, I think it's just comparing, finding. It's not blindly backing, but if it checks those boxes, it's part of our March Madness package, which you could still, of course, join. As Matt does the projections, the usage, all those tools that we've got. So a lot of opportunities there. All right, let's keep it moving. Interesting 10-7. Miami and USC. I've gone back and forth on this game. I'm pretty sure you're on the Trojans, 139.5. You mentioned the deficiencies on the interior for Miami, but they can combat that with a good backcourt. How do you see this game, and where are we looking in the DFS side?
Yeah, we've seen them play some teams with size, and we've seen them play them well. They just played Duke really close. When I look back at that game, though, to me, it seems more like Duke didn't play to their advantages rather than Miami really mitigated them. So to me, if USC plays to their advantages, I think they should get the job done here. They basically have all of the metrics pointing their direction. Offensive efficiency, they're 84th, which is solid. Miami's a little better at 27th, but the real difference is on defense. Miami is a complete sieve. They're 256 on defense overall. You isolate that to interior defense, they're outside the top 300. You look at rebounding, outside the top 300. And that's exactly what USC does well. They score well in the interior with their size. Drew Peterson, who's like a combo guard, he has a lot of size. Mobley's there, of course. They actually have a pretty deep front court as well. They're going to rotate a lot of players in and out. And when they do shoot threes, they don't shoot threes a lot. They're making a pretty good amount of them. They're 76th in the country in three-point percentage. Miami is also not defending beyond the arc well, even with the presence they have. The real one advantage I think Miami could have is just if it comes down to the wire, USC ranks 333rd in free throw shooting. They're not a great shooting team, so they need to play to this advantage to win, in my opinion.
Yeah, we saw some teams, San Diego State comes to mind, just absolutely melt yesterday late. How they lost that game, I'll never know. So you talked about Mobley at the top. You like him on PrizePicks, going over, could just have an absolute monster day. Is he going to be in cash for you, or is he just a tournament play? Where do you do at flat 8 with him?
Mobley, I think, is definitely in play for cash. It's tough on cash today because you have a couple of really good options among the studs, and it kind of just is how your lineup fits together in a way you like. Right now, I tentatively have Mobley in there, but I think you're going to access a higher ceiling with a guy like Kofi Coburn, but Mobley's just rock solid. I don't see any way he really gets you lower than 30 points outside of fouls. And Miami isn't a team that draws a lot of fouls, especially like in the front court. They just don't have the size for it.
You bet this game, correct?
I took USC minus 1.5.
Okay. So you got a little CLV going on in your life. Not bad.
That hasn't helped me yet.
No, I'm telling you something. Every time I beat the line by 2 points or more, I just rip up the ticket at this point. You could just forget it. 139.5 feels right. Is this a game? We really haven't talked about any game so far that you've advocated for this. Could you see yourself like, looking towards a stack and something like this, hoping the game gets going? Or do the pieces just not fit?
I think you can here. The total is 139.5, so it's decent. 2 point spread, so it's projected to remain competitive. The Miami players are all just a little bit expensive. They run a really tight rotation. It's basically just Gajewski, Miller, Moore, Wong, and Wardenberg, and nobody else plays. Unless there's foul trouble or an injury, that's going to be the players they use. The problem is they don't have an alpha between the three of them. The five of them. Jordan Miller has been playing really well lately, and he actually has played well against size, but he's not a forward that brings a ton of size. I believe he's 6'6", and USC is just much longer than that. He does have a 20% shot rate, 34% rebound rate last three, but that 34% rebound rate is on one of the worst rebounding teams in the country. A guy like Gajewski's taken a ton of shots, over 26%. He's doing a bit in the periphery as well. But again, he's 7,300. Like, he's more expensive than Tubelis for Arizona. So I think in GPPs, if you're running 150, which is available today, you're definitely getting Miami pieces. I would probably try to stack them with Mobley. Otherwise, on a main team, I'm not playing any of them in cash.
All right. One of the teams that we have seen already, we talked about this a couple teams yesterday, didn't fare well for Indiana, who disgraced themselves. Notre Dame maybe will fare a little better. You're wearing the hat. They beat Rutgers. Let me ask you this philosophically. Do you worry at all that the game was absurd? It was multiple overtimes. Do you think that's just an overrated storyline?
I think it makes a little bit of a difference. I think it makes more of a difference in the conference tournaments when these teams are playing every day, potentially. They did get a day rest, but I mean, Alabama, they're fresh. And the issue here is Alabama just plays at a breakneck pace, and the way they play forces other teams to play with them. The other reason I think it could be a factor is Notre Dame doesn't have a deep bench. They basically play like 6 dudes, and that's it. So, I mean, these guys are going to get full run. They got a couple overtimes against Rutgers, and now Bama is going to make them sprint out there. So maybe a little bit here. I do like the Bama side just from a betting perspective. It's a really good buy low spot on this team. And Notre Dame is, if this was a matchup with Rutgers, I would be a little more hesitant. They just match up a little better. But I mean, Notre Dame here, they're a tough sell in my opinion.
So what does that do? Because Bama is a 4-point favorite. I do lean there. 152.5 tells the story. You got a guy like Atkinson, 6,400. He was just surgical against Rutgers. Do you go to him here? Are these guys priced enough that even with some of these and the travel as well? Or are you kind of taking a hesitant approach given some of these factors?
I think Atkinson's fine. Alabama on defense is pretty giving to opposing bigs. They don't play with a lot of size, and it's kind of a revolving door at that 5 position. And to be honest, none of them are particularly any good. So they've gotten beaten up by athletic bigs a lot this year. Paul Atkinson has seen increased usage lately. This is a guy we were worried about minutes previously this year, but they've sort of condensed in that upper 20s, low 30 range. And it seems whenever they have a good matchup, they're willing to play Paul Atkinson above 30 minutes. And that certainly is the case here against Alabama. He has an affordable price, but there is a little risk here. If for whatever reason their coach decides he doesn't like Atkinson in this matchup, he could play 24 minutes. So with him, I think he's a solid tournament play. Rebound upside is definitely there. And with Notre Dame, I think you can look at some of the other guards too. Blake Wesley's their freshman. He's active everywhere across the board. Prentice Hub is like a 27-year-old senior. He's really cheap and he'll play every single minute, but he's just doing a lot less than he has in previous years of his career. Similar to Miami, we know the minutes are condensed, but we just don't have one usage monster for Notre Dame. So great for tournaments, tough for a main team. Bama's priced down a little bit here. Their team total is amazing. Notre Dame's defense is not very good. So Keon Ellis, Jaden Shackelford, Quinterly, JD Davidson, those are the players I would try to get to. Probably not for a main team. They do have risk of fouling. Javon Quinterly fouled out in 19 minutes in their last game. I don't know if there's a player in college basketball that's cost me more money than Quinterly with his streaky play all season long. You talk about 3-point regression. This guy might have seen more 3-point regression than any player in the country. He was above 40% last year. Now he's in the 20s. If you want to really buy low on that regression, I think you can because of the game environment. But man, tough spot overall.
With such a high total, are you going to look to stack this game though? You mentioned the condensed rotation for Notre Dame. You've got, the top 4 price guys for this game are on the Alabama side. Can you take 2 of them and a couple of the Notre Dame guys and hope it pushes over the total, or do you not see yourself doing that?
For tournaments, you absolutely can.
Okay. Anything else? Are you going to bet this game? You're going to go against the family?
I bet Alabama this morning.
Okay.
Took them at -4.
They're a dangerous team. I hope that I hope we see them against Montana State, but even if we have to see them against Texas Tech,
this team has losses to Iona and Davidson. They have wins over Kentucky and Gonzaga.
Yeah, they lost to Georgia.
Oh no, they did not. They lost to Kentucky twice. Excuse me. They did lose to Georgia. My goodness, but the win over they've lost to Mississippi State, to Iona.
Yeah, they beat Tennessee.
Yeah, and they beat Gonzaga.
Dangerous, but they could get blown out anytime. That's just the way they play. You mentioned the insane tempo. That'll be an exciting game to watch. Equally exciting, different tempo though. Virginia Tech, who is just coming in. They may have not even got in given what the committee said even after the run against Texas. Texas is still mercifully a 1-point favorite, 123.5 point total. You couldn't have teams in more opposite directions. So maybe there's an opportunity for a hard reset, or maybe Texas is just done. So what do you do here? How do you see this game going? You've got Timmy Allen, if he can follow his brother, maybe he's in play. What do you do here with the Hokies and the Longhorns?
Yeah, we talked about Quinterly maybe being the player that's cost me the most money this year. Texas is probably the team that's cost me the most money this year. If you just looked at them at the beginning of the year with their recruits and the transfers they brought in, you'd think this is maybe a top 5 team in the country. And they certainly have not played to that. This was a pick 'em at one point. I think you can find VT as a dog now. For DFS, the total is extremely low, 123.5. So you're certainly not playing Timmy Allen over the Arizona guys at his price, even though his usage is pretty good. Marcus Carr maybe is a tournament play. Occasionally I play him on shorter slates because without foul trouble, he will play over 30 minutes and he has solid rates. It's just, I don't trust Chris Beard at all. So it's a tough spot, especially considering the total. Both these teams are implied for less than 65 points. Just a really tough spot to get to. Virginia Tech enters a tough matchup here. The same thing with Aluma, Mutz, Couture, Lean. These guys are just in a super low total game and they're priced up. Again, it comes down to opportunity cost. Are you going to play Keve Aluma over Mathurin? It's not going to be me.
What about Storm Murphy?
There have been games where he's just lost minutes to like Padula, and he doesn't really do anything on the floor at this point. A lot of his usage came earlier in the year. He's a guy they soured on a little bit. I know he's hit some big shots for them in the conference tournament particularly, but there's better value than Storm Murphy.
So just a game that it sounds like you're pretty down on from the DFS side, that you're not going to have much exposure to the game as a whole.
Yeah, and that's going to be the case with most games below a 125 total.
Yeah, fair enough. You bet it?
No, I am really flirting with the idea of taking Virginia Tech. Outside of Bama, maybe the streakiest team in the country. I think when Virginia Tech loses, teams with a lot of size can take advantage of them, but Texas doesn't have that. They're 244th in rebounding. They don't play with a big man. So they don't really exploit Virginia Tech on the interior. But again, Virginia Tech, if they hit their threes, they can roll you. If they do not hit their threes, they've lost to some bad teams this year.
Any feel on Timmy Allen's rebounding prop? It sits at 6 on the number.
I can look for you. Off the top of my head, I do not have a strong feeling. It feels about right. Did you have a feeling? No,
not really. I think that is about right. I know you have you project these things. You have the usage data. That's part of the appeal of and the value that Timmy we have.
Allen, he's at 7.5. It's pretty good.
Okay. That's better than I thought. I am
He's going to play every minute. So
I am so soured on this team. I bet them against TCU. I bet them against Gonzaga early in the year. I bet them the whole way.
So did I. Oh my God. That Gonzaga game was unbelievable.
It's just brutal. Yeah. And I will try to get some FanDuel plays in here as well. We're juggling. We'll see. The FanDuel has an extra game as well. The Nova Delaware game is just not even on this slate, but we'll get there. We'll see what we can do. All right. Let's kick it halfway home here with the Chattanooga Mocs. Should have been Furman. It's not. It's Chattanooga. And now they get Illinois. 8-point spread, 135.5. This team is I'm very impressed with Chattanooga. I think they can play. I just don't love the matchup. Still not deterred. I think they hang in. But from a DFS style, from a, just stylistic profile, what do you see with this team? Are they a mid-major you target, or are they one where you say the prices just don't fit?
They're not really a mid-major I look at too much. I mean, they play a lot in the interior. I think
they got bigs.
Yeah, but can they play with Kofi Coburn?
Well, that could be a slight issue. Malachi Smith's going to have a day.
We'll talk about Malachi Smith for DFS. That dude projects extremely well. You talk about guys on mid-majors with a ton of usage that have elite projections. It is Malachi Smith. But as far as some of the stylistics, like Chattanooga is your typical mid-major that doesn't play anybody. Their best win on the year is against VCU. They won by 2 points. Got crushed by Murray State, got crushed by Middle Tennessee State. Middle Tennessee State, for reference, was the #1 team in their conference in the regular season. They just lost to UAB in a crazy game in the tournament. So they don't have any good wins. Illinois is an elite team when they're fully healthy, which they are now, getting Grandison back. Kofi Coburn's no longer suspended. Curbelo seems to be getting eased off that minute restriction we saw midseason. I bet Illinois. I took them at 7.5. It looks like the line's coming back down to them. I think that line is a bit absurd. And I mean, we talk about shot quality a lot at the beginning of the year. Shot quality projects full games out. Chattanooga is one of the teams that has like one of the most severe negative regression expectations. They went 25-7 this year. Based on their shot quality, they should have went 19-13. Illinois is one of the few teams that actually is bound for positive regression. I think a lot of that due to the injuries they sustained. I think Illinois absolutely pounds Chattanooga.
Oof. All right. Well, one of us will be right, because like I said, I got 8.5 this morning.
Hopefully it's me, because you got me on Richmond yesterday.
Well, yeah, we'll level it. Hopefully it just lands on 8. Then we can all have a lovely day. So you mentioned Coburn. Is he in cash for you? 9,100, obviously an alpha. We talked about paying up for Murray and maybe Sheetway and those guys. Are you going to do the same thing today with him, who could have, obviously, if he stays out of foul trouble, just a monster day?
He's one of 4 players, I think, in the elite price range that I'm having a hard time getting to. You can afford 3. Kofi's the most expensive. The 4 players are Kofi Coburn, Mobley, Johnny Davis from Wisconsin, and then Mathurin. I think Mathurin is the best play out of the 4. But then from there, it becomes a roster construction thing. Can you fit Coburn and find plays that you like around him that makes sense? And he's a guy that I'm having some trouble getting to. I definitely want to prioritize him. He projects for a double-double just without any adjustments, 30% rebound rate, 22% shot rate last 3, plays 30-plus minutes, 35 minutes if he doesn't foul. That is a risk for him. But against the bigs of Chattanooga, I don't really see it being a major risk. It's just a drastic difference in level of competition.
Before we move on, talk to me about Malachi Smith. You mentioned and alluded, this guy's got major usage. If they win this game or keep it close, it has to be him. He's going to play a ton of minutes. He didn't even play that good against Furman, but they still, when they needed him most, flat 6, that's got to be a buy.
For sure. Even if Illinois blows him out, Malachi Smith's an amazing play. Plays every minute, usage rate above 20%, 27% shot rate, 22.5% rebound rate, 22.5% assist rate last 3. Just amazing rates for the price here. I would much rather play Malachi Smith than get like the 3rd or 4th most used player on a better team. He's phenomenal. Even like De Souza's okay. It's just like De Souza's gonna have to bang against Kofi. And so same with Darius Banks. I think you just play Malachi Smith.
All right. Halfway home. 8 up. I mean, I guess a little more than halfway, because we only got 7 games left. I will say, if you were looking for more information, if you're wondering how is he pulling these stats, where are you getting these numbers, we have that as all part of our March Madness package. You can click it right in the link of the description. Or if you say, you know what, I can't play DFS in my state with college, I just want to bet the games, we have our premium betting picks package. Us, the whole team, Alex, Steve, Buzzard, everyone getting in there in our Discord, also available in the description of this video. And if you're not getting any of that and you say, you know what, I still want to help you guys out, hit that like button. It really does help with the algorithm. As Lofty says, the YouTube overlords are after us. So we need to combat them. We got a lot going on here and it means a lot for us. Okay, let's get to another beatdown game. The team I probably know least about in the entire tournament. I don't think I've seen this team play once, and that would be Cal State Fullerton. They draw Duke, big time spread, 18.5. I doubt it'll stay close, 145 point total. So what does this team do? Do they have someone we need to take notice of, or are they irrelevant for the slate?
They have some decent guys. I think they're slightly worse than Malachi Smith, but as far as what Cal State Fullerton, did in their conference, they were the number 2 team in the Big West. They defeated Long Beach State by 1 point to get here, but they don't have a strong resume. Their best win is probably over like some conference teams, Long Beach or like Hawaii, maybe, I don't know. But they have losses to Santa Clara, San Jose. They lost to San Jose State. I just see that in my notes. San Jose State might be the worst team in the Mountain West. That team has like 3 wins. Lost to Wyoming by 13, San Diego State. Most of these are double-digit losses, and then the San Jose State loss is just inexcusable. So I do not think they have any shot here at beating Duke. But for DFS, they have a couple guys that are pretty strong in usage. EJ Nock is a player that we'll see every single minute without foul trouble. He has a 45.5% rebound rate last 3. Again, that's coming against the likes of Long Beach State. So banging in the paint against big Mark Williams and Paulo Banchero is not going to be easy for him. But if you want to target a guy here, the rates are there. The problem is he's $800 more expensive than Malachi Smith. So I'm just saving the $800 playing Smith over EJ. But in tournaments, you possibly could do this. Duke fits the Gonzaga, Baylor, that mold with a competitive game. These studs are going to absolutely break the slate like we saw with Gonzaga yesterday. If it plays to the spread, you're going to see limited minutes for all of them. That makes Banchero very risky, but if you're looking for pivots just straight off Coburn for tournaments, he does make some sense. I would rather play Banchero than a Wendell Moore. Wendell Moore just doesn't have the same kind of usage. Mark Williams, his limitations come down to minutes. Coach K sometimes plays in 20, sometimes plays in 30. If he hits 30, he's a walking double-double. Griffin and Keels are the 4th and 5th most used options here. I would rather play Malachi Smith and some of the just elite mid-major players over them.
Yeah, so really nothing. I mean, all Duke's potential plays look like they're sporting the forward tag. Any guards for them besides Keels?
Just the guards in the offense. Like Wendell plays kind of like a winger. He'll handle the ball occasionally. Mark Williams is like your pure 5. Banchero is similar to Wendell. They use Jeremy Roach a lot off the bench as a guard. He plays like 20 to 25 minutes, but he's not somebody that is really worthwhile. Doesn't have a ton of upside. Doesn't have any minute upside. He's 4,800. So if you play him and Duke blows him out, maybe he sees like 27, but he seems a little thin to me.
So on the slate so far, did you find yourself not seeing, we had Frank Collins yesterday. Are there, Chad is asking a lot about value. Do you find yourself unable to get some values? Have we not got there? Or do you think it's more of a balanced build on a macro level today?
There's absolutely no Frankie Collins, but there are some value guys. Arizona has a few and Colgate has a few. So 2 games we haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah, we'll talk about Moffitt. Anything else here? I'm not really looking to do much with this in the betting market. If I had to bet it, I'd probably lay the points, but I don't think this is a priority for me.
I laid the points with Duke, but it's not even a full unit bet for me. At this point, I wouldn't take it.
Yeah, that's fair. We already talked about this game. We'll go real quick with the Yale guard, Matt Noling. He plays a ton of minutes. You have any interest in pay down? He's in the Storm Murphy category of possibly irrelevant.
He doesn't have as consistent of minutes as some of the other players. With Noling, he's played 30, 32, and 26 minutes. I feel like if you're playing a value guy for Yale, they got to be minutes max. And then Noling is not a strong usage player. He's an 11% usage rate. He's mainly going to get there with assists. That's his best statistical category. And assists just aren't a ceiling type category for me. So decent floor, no ceiling type play for Noling.
Oh, look at that on the screen. A guy named Dave Loughran has been on Team Awesemo for 12 months. Good job, fella. You get a new badge, even though you're the one handing out the badges. Right on the top of the screen there. And if you want to get your badge, you can press join and be part of the team. I asked you before the show, I was saying today's games to me are a little tougher to break down. I said, like Iowa State and LSU, and you said I think LSU may destroy them. They are a 4-point favorite, 128.5 point total. And then to hurt Eric Lindquist's heart, you said that the Cyclones don't even probably belong in the tournament at this point, just not playing like a tournament team. Does that translate all the way to the DFS side? What do you see with this team who started out, I believe, like they were over 10-0, and then they really did not do much in the second half of the year?
Yeah, it's the inverse of Texas A&M. They ran hotter than the sun to begin the year, and the negative regression hit them extremely hard. Their shot quality record is 17-15. That's definitely not tournament quality. Horrific losses in the Big 12 as well. And they played one of the weakest non-cons I've ever seen. They have losses across the boards like Kansas State, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, who's a horrific team. And making matters worse, they just can't score. There was a game in recent memory. I don't remember who they faced, but they scored 36 points.
Yeah. Oklahoma State.
Is that the game? 36 points. Yeah. 53-36 was that game. I mean,
I watched it. It was bad.
I think I would rather watch Gonzaga practice.
Yeah,
but anyway, so this game is a 4-point spread. And so what does Iowa State do well? They're great on defense. They're 6th. They're facing a hyper athletic, a younger LSU team. And LSU has the same strengths. They're solid on defense as well here. LSU is much, much bigger. Iowa State's outside the top 300 in rebounding. LSU has a massive advantage here with Tari Eason and Darius Days. The biggest concern with the players in LSU is foul issues. Tari Eason just cannot keep his hands to himself, but he's one of the best players in the country when he's on the floor. I don't really see Iowa State drawing a ton of fouls on Eason. Eason will come off the bench, but if he plays to his full minutes, this guy's going to absolutely destroy Iowa State's front court. So for the betting perspective, that's where I lean. For DFS, it's Eason or move on for me. Maybe a Darius Days in a tournament build, but we're talking about a really low total here, 128.5. And on Iowa State, right now, they're just playing 7-8 guys with a 62 implied team total and prices that rival the Arizona guys at the top. Just not a spot to get to.
In terms of just trying to put it into context, you've got a guy like Eason. Mobley's a couple $100 south of him. Jabari is a couple $100 north of him. Are they about all the same to you? Do you have a priority list if you find yourself in that range?
I think they have the same ceiling, but Eason has a drastically lower floor because of the fouls. He fouls incessantly. Luckily, Iowa State just doesn't draw fouls. They're 237th in fouls drawn. So, I mean, LSU is 26th in fouls committed. So that is an issue. But I don't see I don't see Iowa State exploiting that necessarily.
Any pay down options in this game? A guy like Reed for LSU, Kunk for Iowa State. Do you see salary relief there? Is it a little too thin?
I think it's too thin. These players don't have consistent minutes. And for a guy like Efton, he benefits so much from the foul trouble above him. So that's a concern in this spot.
You bet LSU, correct?
Yeah. Slammed LSU. I bet the over much earlier in the week when it's at 125. So
yep.
I mean,
you can rip that ticket up 3.5 points. I got it
at 124.5.
Oh, that's even worse.
Now that I have the closing line value, just not gonna.
Nope. Be in the 50s probably. But yeah, I may look to tail you on LSU as well. I do agree talent wise and just where the trajectory of the teams have gone this year. Iowa State, I mean, they're really in the dumpster, and they look at that non-con schedule. I just pulled it up. They started 12-0. Chicago State, Jackson State, Arkansas Pine Bluff, Grambling, Alabama State, Kennesaw State, Oregon State, who might be the worst state out there at this point. A lot of cupcakes.
Yeah,
it's bad.
It's bad.
Question from chat. Morgan Smith is asking, going back a little bit, but we didn't really talk about FanDuel, and I'm trying to get it all in. Are you okay with playing Quinterly and Shackelford together in cash on FanDuel? Is that something that you think the salaries could work? Is it one or the other? How do you see yourself going there?
So I'm focusing a little bit on DraftKings today. I did projections for FanDuel. I've looked at FanDuel, and the first thought I had was, my goodness, Javon Quinterly has an absolutely laughable price. He's 4,800 on FanDuel. I did not build a cash game, but I cannot imagine leaving Javon Quinterly out of a cash lineup at 4,800. He's priced below like some like ancillary players on mid majors. It's just, I don't understand.
That doesn't make sense.
Shackelford has a strong price tag as well. Like, he's a good value play, but just Quinterly being so dang cheap is ridiculous. I'll take a look on the back end while we're talking about a future game, but to the answer you, Quinterly for sure. I'm not sure about Shackelford.
There you go. Biggest spread of the day.
I just looked. I just sorted by value. Number 1 value, Quinterly. Number 2, Shackelford. You'll probably just play both in cash.
There you go. See, Morgan Smith, you're on it. You got it on lock. Wright State. They knocked off my boys. Now their treat is to get Arizona 20.5, 155.5. I doubt it stays close. So here we go. Basil, any of these guys holding, do we get them out of the way, or do you think in a game against Arizona, they can coexist?
Yeah, perfect game environment to take some highly used studs on a major underdog. Don't see Wright State benching them at any point in the game. These guys have essentially all the uses. Like Wright State plays a hyper narrow rotation. They do not rotate guys off the bench very often. And they're a team that's above average in pace. Arizona already is way above average in pace. So you're talking about a team that might try to run with Arizona. I mean, it's a disaster for real life, but for DFS, this game has an elite total, 156, and Wright State is just below 70 points in their implied team total. For a mid-major with tight rotation and cheap prices, we definitely want to get here. Basil gives me a little bit of pause because he has such a high foul rate. That will be an issue in this contest against Tabellis and Colico. So he's a player I think you could definitely get to. Usage is phenomenal, but he's a little riskier than Tanner Holden, who's actually cheaper. But Tanner Holden plays more minutes. He's played 39 in back-to-back games, 21.5% shot rate, 25% rebound rate. Holden doesn't foul quite as often. Usage is better. So he's a player I would rather get to, but you honestly cannot go wrong with either. And then at 5,200, Trey Calvin has played 33, 40, and 35 minutes in 3 straight games, 25% shot rate, 28% assist rate in that span. I'm probably playing 2 guys on Wright State, to be honest with you. And it's probably Holden and Calvin. But man, really, really good game to target the underdog mid-major team. Arizona has a 90-point implied team total. It's an exaggeration. It's at 88.75. But even in a blowout, Mathurin, Colico, Tabellis are going to do so much that I think you just got to prioritize Arizona players. I'm trying to get at least 2, probably 3 of them on a lot of teams. It will be chalky, but they play enough guys where I think you can mix and match.
Does Kreese's status matter to you? I mean, it'll probably kill Kier, or is there something that you see that we need to get confirmation before we react?
So I think they're just being a little coy. I don't think Kreese plays. He tweeted
Why
a picture.
would he?
He tweeted a picture of his ankle on Monday. It looked horrific. And I mean, they're 21-point favorites without him. If he does play, I will say this. He's probably going to come off the bench. Their coach said that, and he's probably not going to play full minutes. It would dock Kier's projection. Kier is the 1-for-1 point guard replacement. Kier nearly fouled out of their last game in 13 minutes. Don't make much of that. That's why he didn't play much. He still has elite minute upside. And then Pele Larson's a guy that has already been playing 18 to 20 minutes, even with a healthy Kreese. I think both of them are in play regardless of his status. Obviously, it would be boosted if Kreese misses, but I think you can play any of these guys with such a high team total. Anyone that sees the floor for Arizona can be played today.
Does that include Balo?
No, okay, except him. Except the min-price guy.
That guy's a monster, but man, I don't know if I can see that at almost flat 5. So this is, I mean, you mentioned it could be chalky, but this is a clear potential game stack.
Definitely.
There you go. I'll be interested to see how, not really now, but we'll see against Seton Hall or TCU what Arizona can do in the next round. UAB and Houston, another kind of an interesting game. You've mentioned some of these teams that weren't really expected to get here. UAB would qualify, I think, in some regards. Houston just, they don't care. They lose Sasser and guys, and they just keep going. 8.5-point favorites, 137 total. What can UAB do against this Houston defense? Anything, or is it almost a just irrelevant Bowling Green college football type, throw them off the slate?
UAB is a great mid-major. I wish they'd drawn a better matchup here. I mean, like getting Houston, that's a really tough draw for this team. Now, you look at teams, Shot Quality put out a statistic. It was teams in transition scoring the top 4. They were all 1 seeds except for UAB. I can't remember the 1 seed that didn't make it, but it was a bunch of 1s, and UAB was the other seed that was top 4 in transition scoring. So it's a team that can run. It's a team that can score. It's a team that defends pretty well. They just run into a buzzsaw in Houston. Houston's the 8-point favorite. Total in this game is decent. From a betting perspective, I definitely am not taking a side here just because how alive I think UAB is. You look on offense, like UAB is 20th in offensive efficiency, 34th in defensive efficiency. They may not have won the regular season in their conference, but I don't think this is a lame duck team. For DFS, you have all the Houston guys playing super tight minutes. They're just a little expensive. If I'm playing one, it's probably Kyler Edwards. It's just Kyler Edwards is more expensive than Mathurin. In a 1-for-1 situation, I'm playing Mathurin. In tournaments, I think you can take a stab on Edwards. 21% shot rate, 21% rebound rate, 24% assist rate last 3. Otherwise, I'm probably just not playing a Houston guy. UAB is a little similar. Like, you can get Quan Jackson, who has elite rates across the board. But again, are you playing Quan Jackson or are you going to play Tubelis? Those are the cost-based decisions you have to make today. But in tournaments, I think you could get to these guys.
On the other side, you've got Edwards, you've got Sheed. They play so deliberate, methodical offense. Will UAB maybe pace them up to a degree that you can get to these guys, or does their price point make it very difficult?
UAB is going to try. They play fast. I was a little concerned when I saw the total in the game. My first instinct was to take the over in this spot. And let me see if I have it on my card. I did take it at 136. It got a bad number there. And I think if you play this to the total, it does make sense. But Houston's going to try to slow it down. And I think that makes sense for them. They're very thin, losing Sasser and Mark. They basically play 5 guys, and they want to be a little rested later in the tournament, assuming they make it that far. Like, they're going to have a rock fight against Illinois in the second round if that's how it plays out. A really tough matchup, probably your best matchup on Sunday overall. But again, I don't think it goes much higher than the total here, even though UAB plays fast. I was a little concerned when I saw this come in at 136.
Yeah, I think this, to me, it is a tough game all around. And I would like to see UAB hang in. I think that's possible. I haven't bet it. I'm not going to bet it. And you mentioned kind of some of the concerns maybe on the DFS side. Anything else, any value that you see here? Or is it just kind of a good game, but in a 15, 16 game pool, not one that stands out?
I think between this and LSU, this might be the best real life game we have, but for DFS, it's not the greatest.
Another probably good real life game, 10-7, Davidson, Michigan State, 1-point favorite for the Spartans, 140.5. So pretty healthy. The Foster Lawyer Bowl, as you have coined it. Davidson, they live and die by the 3. They tangled with Richmond. Maybe the A10 is slightly better. Clearly better than the Mountain West. And then you've got Michigan State. So what do we do with this Davidson team? They've got some guys, no one priced over 7K, everyone's 7K and below. Are they playable, the Lee and Lawyer types?
Lawyer, probably not. Lawyer has seen reduced minutes lately. It's basically like 20 to 25, and they've played competitive games, and it hasn't been foul trouble for Lawyer. He just doesn't have the same role we saw earlier in the year. Brajkovic and Hyung Lee both play a ton of minutes and have good usage, though. If you're getting to one of them, that's probably where to go. Total is 140 in the game, which is middling on the slate. Lee and Brajkovic aren't super expensive. You're still kind of looking at pivots in this range over them, I think. Like, I would probably rather get to Quinterly. I'm certainly getting to Tubelis over them. But for tournaments, this game's not going to be played at all. It's going to be a little slower, but both these teams are much better on offense than defense. Davidson is 12th in offensive efficiency, in Michigan State, they're outside the top 100 on defense. Same thing can be said on the other side. So some tournament appeal here. Michael Jones is playing nearly every minute. It's just at 5,600. I'd rather play like Malachi Smith or Holden or some of the other players there. Michigan State runs a 10+ man rotation, and the minutes are very volatile on a game-to-game basis. Just a stay away spot.
So do you need to know, like, it looks like Tyson Walker is going to be good to go. Anything there, as you just mentioned, is Michigan State just a team, their turnover issues, even though Davidson, as you pointed out, doesn't force a ton of them with them. Is it just kind of too crowded of a spot to attack?
In my opinion, yes. I like to play this Michigan State team, take shots on shorter slates, but it's a 15-game slate. So rather than play like Hogard, I think you'd play someone a little bit cheaper. Max Christie's in the same price ranges. Some guys on Arizona that I like a little bit more. I would rather play like Kyer for Arizona for sure. So a top spot to get to, I think.
Are you going to bet it?
I don't think so.
I don't know if I will either. I really go back and forth with this game.
I have the under, but I don't know if I'm going to take a side.
Okay. Under. Yeah, I could see that.
I grabbed it at a slightly better number, though. I have 141.
141. Yeah. So it's come down a half point. And again, if you are betting, sides and totals and props, you want to go to oddshopper.com. It's completely free. You don't even have to sign up. We have all the projections and whatnot embedded right in there, and you can shop the lines amongst all the books, and you'll be amazed how many times you get 1 or point and a half difference, and it makes the difference in the bet. All right, 2 games to go, then we'll bounce on out of here. And of course, you guys know the drill. We've got content all day here on the Awesemo network of shows. We've got NHL, and then we've got a full block of NBA content, just like we did yesterday for one game, but now we actually have a full slate to talk about. So you want to stay tuned here all day. We've got Colgate and Wisco, 7.5 point favorites for Wisconsin, 139.5. The game is in Milwaukee. I think that's ridiculous. Colgate's a good team. They are from the Vermont, South Dakota State cloth. They're going to shoot a lot of threes. They make a lot of threes. Can they do it? Can we target Richardson and Records and some of these guys? How do you see this team competing?
Man, I love Colgate. Loved them as a mid-major making the tournament. Really tough draw for them having to play Wisconsin on a home court. Just an absolute nightmare. Wisconsin has plenty of their own deficiencies. On defense, they're outside the top 100. They're outside the top 250 in overall field goal percentage, taking a lot of contested long twos, really bad shot quality, but they're making a lot of really hard shots. The team bound for negative regression. You mentioned it. Colgate is the second best 3-point shooting team in the country, behind only South Dakota State. Wisconsin right on the bubble of being in the top 100 for 3-point defense. So not a matchup that scares you whatsoever. What you see in terms of height, Colgate doesn't match up that well, but they actually don't cede too much rebounding. They're actually the better rebounding team on the year, I think probably due to weaker competition. This Colgate team is definitely live in this matchup. For DFS purposes, I do think there are some cheap plays on Colgate. We've kind of alluded to one throughout the stream. So I don't know, is it time to talk Ryan Moffitt?
So Ryan Moffitt, yeah, is a name that's come up. He is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, maybe one of the only seemingly playable guys sub 4K.
I think he's the only one.
Okay. So easy cash game click.
Playing him in cash. He's played 31, 32, and 24 minutes in 3 straight games. The 24-minute game was a 28-point victory for Colgate in the conference tournament. So no real worries with minutes. Rates are moderate, but at this price doesn't make a huge difference. 10.5% shot rate, 14.5% rebound rate, 14% assist rate. At 3.7, that's good enough to just get it done. And the reason you're playing Moffitt is he's giving you Kofi, Mobley, Johnny Davis, whoever the studs are of your preference. He's the access point that lets you get 3 of them. So that's solid here. I do think Nelly Cummings is interesting at 4.8. I think everybody's going to flock to the Kyers and the Pele Larsons over him, but he's played 30 minutes in 3 straight. He has a 22% shot rate and a 14% assist rate just for direct pivots. And for reference, this Colgate team total is not bad. The overall total in the game is 139.5. Colgate still in single digits in terms of their underdog potential. Wisconsin 7.5 point favorite. I think they'd be like 5-point underdogs if this was at a true neutral location, but it is not. So some intrigue here for Colgate for sure. On Wisconsin, Johnny Davis, it comes down to, do you think he's healthy? If he's healthy, he's one of the just best plays on the slate. This guy's typically above 9K. He's live for a double-double. Great rebounding rate above 21%. It's almost at 22% on the year. Shot rate above 25%. You got a healthy Johnny Davis. You have an elite tournament play here. So I like Johnny Davis quite a bit.
On Colgate, could you go to Woodward, or is it just not enough minutes? The guy's hyper efficient, but he doesn't rarely crack the 20-minute mark.
Right. I think you probably would just play like a Pele Larson or even like a Nelly Cummings over him.
Fair enough. Yeah, Johnny Davis, that's an interesting one. So in cash, will you not roll him just because of the unknown and makes him a better tournament play? Or do you think he still is in the cash conversation?
So he's healthy enough to play 34 minutes in the Big Ten game that Wisconsin appeared in. That was only a couple days after the injury. He played 34 minutes. Yeah, that's exactly it. He was horrific. But I mean, players have horrific games all the time. Was it the injury that caused the horrific game, or was it just happenstance in terms of timing? He's had an extra week to recover. So I don't think there's any question he can play the minutes. It's just, is the efficiency going to be decreased? I don't know the answer. But man, liking him a lot for tournaments, and he's on the fringe of cash, I think.
18.5 points over at PrizePicks is his prop. Brad Davison, 13.5 points over on PrizePicks. I'm sure he'll be drawing some charges. That, talk about you guys who have been there forever. He would be at the top of that list. All right. We've made it. What about Richardson at 5.8 before we move on? Just neutral?
Richardson at 5.8. Looking at his projection. Yeah, not anything. I would rather just play Holden.
Yeah, the Wright State game really is
he's pretty decent though. I mean, the projection is just a little bit worse because he's more of a peripheral player. But yeah, as a direct pivot, I do think he makes some sense.
The final game, and then we will, like I said, we'll bounce on out of here, set the stage, but we'll have content all day. And if you have questions, I know you've been sweating the games on Twitter at Matt_Gajewski, a great follow, at Jazzraz DFS. You're fighting the trolls, fighting that good fight, doing all the things that we need. The last game's a pick 'em. It's going to be an interesting 8-9 Seton Hall TCU. Feels like a coin flip type of game. Roden, where do we go with him? You've got some other guys here, Miller particularly for TCU. Talk to me about this game.
I like the Seton Hall side. That's the side I'm going to bet. They're just a little better across the board. They are 140th in offensive efficiency. TCU is 196th. On defense, Seton Hall's 46th. TCU's 59th. In rebounding, they're 24th and 25th, so not really an edge there. But you look at effective height, Seton Hall's 7th. TCU is 89th. So there's a couple little edges here for Seton Hall. I think if it comes down to the spread and free throws, Seton Hall's 51st, TCU's 324th. In turnovers, TCU's outside the top 300, Seton Hall's 122nd. So another maybe little edge there. Neither of these teams foul a ton, and they're both pretty good at drawing fouls. I don't really see an edge there, but just like a lot of tiny little edges pointing towards Seton Hall. You have to hope Kadari Richmond is healthy. He's their main ball handler now that Bryce Aiken is out. So that is a little bit of a concern, but Kadari did play 26 minutes a week ago in their final conference game. He's dealing with a sprained thumb, so that could be aggravated at any point, which is a risk. But I think a fully healthy Seton Hall is better than this TCU team. At a pick 'em, I'm willing to back them. For DFS, the total's below 130. Both these teams below 65-point implied team totals. Not something I want to target, especially with Seton Hall running an 8-man rotation right now. And the same can be said for TCU.
Interesting game. Yeah, I've gone again. It's an 8-9. I go back and forth with it. I can get on board with Pirates, though. You mentioned Roden and whatnot. They really could have used Aiken coming back at some point. That's unfortunate. All right. Anything else that you want to talk about real quick? If you want to give a 60-second spiel on the one game we didn't have on the DraftKings slate for FanDuel people, we've got Delaware and Villanova. Villanova's a big time favorite. Connor Galipsy, they shoot a ton of threes. It's hard to imagine Delaware comes into it. Anything there, or just final thoughts before we bounce on out of here? We got a couple minutes.
Justin Moore's cheap. I think he continues to be a buy low. He has a 24% shot rate last three. He's 5,700. So he's right in that like Shackelford category. It's just Bama has such a better team total. I think Shaq is the 1-for-1 play. But if you're looking for a pivot, Moore could make some sense. Delaware, they run a 7-man rotation, and the pricing on FanDuel is just so inefficient that I'm a little less enticed by the usage monsters on the mid majors, because you have Quinterly at 4,700 or whatever it is. Like Sasha Stefanovic is 3.7K. And I don't think Stefanovic is any monster by any means, but I mean, 3.7K for a guy that plays 30 minutes for a team total north of 75. It's a little egregious on FanDuel.
It seems like there's more value there. All right. Final question.
FanDuel, you can do whatever you want.
Lawless Society. Can you pivot off Kier and play Curbelo?
Yeah, we didn't talk a lot about Curbelo, but he's a player that just hasn't seen normal minutes, and his minutes are ascending because he's still working his way back from that neck injury and the concussion. But Curbelo, 17 to 22 to 28 minutes in their most recent game. He's not affected by Grandison coming back. Grandison more affects like Hawkins. I think Curbelo's role is consistent. If you play him at 5K, though, you just hope that he takes that next step from 28 to maybe 32, 33.
There you have it. 15.5 up, 15.5 down. Thanks, guys, for tuning in again. For me, for Matt, for Mike behind the glass, we appreciate you. Hit the like button on the way out. And of course, there's more games tomorrow, so you know where we'll be. Same time, same place, breaking it all down. Until then, thanks to PrizePicks for sponsoring us once again. Good luck. Enjoy the games. And we will see you guys tomorrow.